quiet during the music. I was feeling less confident because I wasn't hearing anything. Oops. What? You were? Didn't hear you. Sing louder next time. Okay. Let's talk about it. Halloween. Probably the most difficultest time of the year to celebrate or not to celebrate. Do you celebrate? Do you don't? You don't do it. You do it. You don't do it. You do it. I don't know. What do you do? Do you do? Do you do half of it? Do you do parts of it? Do you just go ahead and just do it? As a Christian, I don't know. What do you do? How have you handled it? How have you all handled it over the years? How's your parents handled it?
Oh, I just don't go. We're too lazy.
You just lock yourself in and don't go anywhere and just stay home?
I mean, the nearest house is like a couple miles away. So.
He lives out in the country, so he doesn't have to handle any trick-or-treating. Do you? Do you not? So, I was even watching earlier on YouTube, there was Allie Beth Stuckey did a podcast today even, and she was putting her 2 cents in the whole thing, and I think it's kind of along the lines of where we're going to go tonight too. I would like to, first of all, before I start, this lesson, I robbed a lot of it from Answers in Genesis, and, hey caramba. So a lot of the graphics, the pictures and stuff, I just ruined my microphone, that I got were from them. This was a trusty little microphone for so long. So anyway, I'm not going to tell you what you got to do or what you should or shouldn't do. I just want to share some information with everybody about Halloween, the origin of it, where it started, and kind of give you some ideas about where some of the aspects of it came from. And then I think this would be a lesson that would be intended to leave to the conscience of the believer how to best handle it. But I want to give you some very stark, direct information, and you got to know where the origins of some of this comes from. The biggest thing I want you to know tonight is this. From the beginning roots of Halloween, which we're going to start about 2,000 years ago or so, from the very beginning, Christianity has struggled to relate, to figure out how to try to evangelize the lost pagan world. And so Christianity has struggled to figure out where participation needs to stop and start and where the line would be. And so Christianity as a whole, we have never figured it out 100%. And there's not one way as a Christian to handle everything. So that's why you don't hear black and white rules or black and white, like some Christians do this, some Christians do this. It's usually how we listen to it. Instead of somebody saying, hey, Christians shouldn't celebrate it because it's too close to paganism. We don't say that because it is one of those gray areas. However, Halloween is very closely related to the topic of death and paganism and spiritism. And so knowing that, we probably would be able to start asking ourselves some questions about where our limitations might be in our involvement. And there are actually good replacements for doing the normal celebrations that our society does. Like some people do trunk or treats, some people do harvest festivals where there's no spiritual stuff involved with it. It's just a fellowship thing. There are other festivities that people do, like autumn type things. There's also a celebration on October 31st called Reformation Day. And some families choose to celebrate Reformation Day, which is called the Protestant Reformation. It was October 31st in whatever year, over 500 years ago now. where Martin Luther nailed the 95 Thesis on the doors of the Sistine Chapel and said basically we're going to rebel against the Catholic Church, and Christianity should be available to all people, and the information should be available to all people. The Bible should be available to all people, and I'm against some of the teachings of the Catholic Church. And he started what's called the Protestant Reformation, which pretty much started what we know of as Protestantism today. And if you choose to do that, that's a pretty good option. But I know that some of you have differing views, and you come from different families that have different backgrounds in relation to these topics. So why don't we just start off with a few facts about Halloween, and here's kind of where we'll start off. There's usually a spectrum in a lot of these subjects that you have to realize. People, if you could see the little white line here in the middle of the slide, think of that as like a line that shows on two ends, there's two different ends of a spectrum. You guys understand what I mean when I say that? Some people believe something on this end, and some people believe something on this end, and everybody in the middle kind of tries to find their place. So on one end of the spectrum, people see Halloween as utter darkness. Don't involve yourself. Everything's bad. Shut the lights out. Lock the door. Watch a movie. Don't answer. And don't interrelate with your culture, your society, your neighbors. Don't answer because it's all bad. And then on the other end of the spectrum, some Christians will say, I've been forgiven for my sins, and I'm new in Christ, and I can do pretty much whatever I want, and it doesn't really matter because it's all just fun and games anyway, and so it's more lighthearted fun on the other end. And some Christians call these two different ends of the spectrum legalism and license, or legalism and freedom, ultimate freedom to do whatever we want in Christ. And both ends of the spectrums, the extremes, I would say, just tell you off the top, beginning of the lesson, I think both extremes are wrong. And both extremes don't leave room for nuances and like different latitudes that we can give for grace in these areas. And we're trying to navigate this together as Christians, right? And nobody has a hard, fast, fixed rule on what we should and shouldn't do. So, one thing is for sure, we do know that Halloween is one of the highest sales times of the season or the year for a lot of stores that do participate in selling candy and things like that, costumes. There is an actual store that sells only Halloween stuff. They were open here last year. They didn't open this year over there. What was that place called?
Spirit.
What? Spirit what?
Halloween.
Spirit Halloween. I actually was trying to see if they were still open when we were doing our Christmas party, because I was looking for what was I looking for? Something to air at balloons or something like that. And they were just taking the signs down at 8th and Downs and stuff like that day. Anyway, so yeah, I was going to go frequent the Halloween store for a balloon air up thingy. So stores love Halloween. But we see it everywhere. We see it in your schools. Like one of the things Lexi and I are trying to navigate right now is Olivia Lauren, in pre-K, and they're trying to teach them the alphabet and stuff, and they're using these like more Halloween themed during this season. They're using Halloween themed like spooky songs, and it's starting to kind of confuse Livy on some things. And so we're just like, okay, we don't really want that, because that's kind of getting into that area that we don't like. But it's everywhere, no matter where you go. So, people who don't, who doesn't like Halloween? Take a guess. This time of year is the worst time of year for this, I'm going to say, career. Huh? Yeah. Police officers, firefighters. Is that how kind of Trav feels? I mean, it's like... That's right. Yeah, all hands on deck. Oh, Thanksgiving. Oh, here comes Thanksgiving. Everybody's going to get, their family's coming to town. They're going to fight over the washer and dryer. They're going to, they'll be out in the front yard at some point. Sorry, I don't want to get too far into that. But yeah, firefighters, EMS, police, they don't like Halloween because the higher crime rates, the pranking, When I worked at United, we were told, do not sell eggs and toilet paper to anyone under 18 years old. Not allowed. Not on Halloween. And as you can probably tell why, it's they knew what was going to be happening. So, about $1 billion annually is spent in the United States just on Halloween trinkets. Some households will spend literally hundreds of dollars on things like costumes for dressing up or candy for trick-or-treating and decorations. And I think I shared this one time is costumes for their pets. That's important, right? One statistic says that over 70% of Americans say that they celebrate Halloween, which means a lot of Christians likely do as well. So this is something that we're not going to be able to avoid, and we can't just put our head in the ground and hide from this subject. But Halloween is here to stay. Now we want to talk tonight about where the origins of it started. So, according to Answers in Genesis, and they have everything, they have things to back this up. So, we're going to try to think biblically about it, and we want to start out where we're talking about the jack-o'-lanterns, the costumes, the ghost stories, black cats crossing your path. Bobbing for apples actually came from a pagan origin and occult practice. But I want to define something for you. Halloween starts with the idea of paganism. It's a polytheistic or pantheistic nature-worshipping religion, which that's what paganism is defined as. Theistic means God or gods, and poly means many, pan means everything. So whether it's a polytheistic view or a pantheistic view, one is worshiping creation through saying that creation is all God, and God He is a part of everything. Like God is that freezer back there. God is in everything, or gods, multiple gods. So these two views are 2,000 years ago where some of this stuff started. And let me go through my notes here and make sure I'm not skipping anything. Halloween is the only day of the year where we tell kids to do the opposite of what we normally tell them to do. We tell them to dress up like pagans, scare people, send them out at nighttime to get candy from strangers. And we say, it's okay, it's all in fun. Okay? And so, paganism can be seen as religious, can be satanic, it can be devil worshiping. Matter of fact, I've seen a lot of things that October 31st is like satanic. It's like the satanic high day. It's like their day of worship and all of that. And they love it because most of the general population are giving credence to the occult practices that they already practice in their seances and stuff like that. But it doesn't just mean satanic and demonic and occult. It also can be shared with people who say they don't believe in God. Atheists celebrate stuff like this. One of their best people that they like to quote is Carl Sagan, and he had a show called something about the cosmos. I can't remember. The Cosmos. And he said that the cosmos is all that is or ever was or ever will be. Meaning the universe is all there is. So everything that would involve Halloween would be permissible for the atheist, even if it involves supernatural, occultic, spiritual things, because it's a worship of nature. Pantheism and paganism, polytheism, is all nature related. It's all a worship of the animals, the cats, the vegetation or the harvest, the pumpkins. And then you have all of those themes, and it can be shared among all world's religions and systems. Now, Christianity comes along, and we'll get into this here in just a second, but Christianity has come along, and they've tried to do everything they can to placate to the world and try to make it fun, but also try to get some cleanliness into it. And it just hasn't worked very well. Okay? So, I'm going to say this tonight. Halloween is not neutral. The Bible makes it clear that we can't mix pagan beliefs or pagan practices or pagan outworkings with Christianity. But we're going to come back to that here in just a second. If you think about all of the mythological religions that are out there and that have been around in all of human history, you could name the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Germanics, the Norse people, and then you have Wicca and witchcraft, you have the occult, and all of these different structures that have come to our timeline, part of the timeline, from all the different places in the world, all have had celebrations around this time of the year, and a lot of it you guys have heard of before, like the Day of the Dead, for example. What kind of people group do you think of when you think of that, the Day of the Dead? Hispanic. Well, did you know that actually all of those people groups pretty much have a source? The Day of the Dead has credence to all of those different religions and different sources. But let's fast forward a little bit to talking a little bit more about how did Halloween get its start as we know it today, okay? It traces back to the Celtic people groups, the Scots and the Irish, who migrated to the U.S. in the mid-1800s and the early 1900s. They brought their Halloween traditions with them, and they started becoming popular in the U.S. around the 1920s. So just 100 years is really all we're talking about. And it's grown exponentially in popularity since then. We're going to talk about this next Wednesday, Lord willing. But these people groups in the 1800s, the Celts and the Scots, actually have their source in the Tower of Babel. And we can trace the pagan roots of Halloween actually back all the way back to the Tower of Babel. And we can actually go back to one of the sons of Noah, and his descendants would be the ones that this all started with. So the Celts, who were the upper class people, they were the leaders, they were the scholars, they emerged as the elites in Britain and Ireland. And it started over 2,000 years ago, and we're going up to the mid-1800s to look at how they got to the United States, okay? So when all this started, it all deviated to a path of paganism and polytheism. So these people believed, now think about this, the people that started Halloween believed in reincarnation, ancestor worship, and they tended to meet in groves and caves and in fields, and even they met in places that they thought of as sacred, like Stonehenge, Woodhen, Castlework, and Stone Circle, and so on and so forth. So the Celts, let me go back here, there was a group called the Druids that they were the ones that created the seances, the religious meetings that had more of the ancestry worship and the practices that were more related to like talking to the dead or respects for the dead and the Day of the Dead types of things, okay? So they would meet in these different places, and they had a very special festival, okay? Actually, let me back up just a little bit here before I get into that. Okay, so in a nutshell, yeah, let me go ahead here. Sorry, I've got these notes that are just like, I've got 28 slides, okay? So the Celts held a special festival called Samhain. Now, the spelling of it is Samhain, but the way you would say it was Samhain or Samhain, okay? Which means summer's end in Gaelic or Gallic, however you say that, okay? So on the night of October 31st, they would welcome in their, quote, new year by doing bonfires and doing pagan rituals, and they would disguise themselves in costumes. And the reason they did that is because they believed that if they dressed themselves in as different people or in costumes, it would confuse the spirit realm. So the way that they thought about things was like this. Okay, so part of the year is hot, part of the year is cool, or part of the year is more light, and part of the year is more dark. And the bookmark of where that splits for them, they would think of as October 31st. It's like, this is when it starts getting colder, like really cold. And it stops getting warm and daylight begins to lessen. And so what they thought was, in their thinking process was this, like, okay, so light is diminished and dark is greater. Therefore, there's something spiritual about this. So what's in the light must be good, and what's in the dark must be more evil. And so they believed that the world would go dark around October 31st. And so because of this, they believed that if let me say something else about that. So like you have light and dark, October 31st. Okay, so this is the day that meets. And so here's also what they believe, that spirits can now cross over to the physical, and the physical can now cross over to the spiritual about this time of year. This was the point of the year where they believed that there was an interacting happening between what we know of as demonic, but spiritual and physical. That's why they would dress themselves in a costume, so they would believe that it would confuse the spirits and keep the spirits away from them. Okay? And that's where the source of dressing up in costumes came from originally. Now don't, by me saying that, I'm not saying, okay, I'm done with Halloween now, okay? All right?
So what was their point of like from dark to light?
What was the point? That was the time of the year where they...
No, like there's October 31st. But when did they go from dark to light?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Probably in the spring sometime, right? So, because we're not talking about that time of year.
Yeah.
All right, so, like for example, in spring, things sprout, they live, they grow, they're green. In harvest time, things die, they wither, leaves fall. I mean, death would be more prevalent to their mind as they were seeing things just going away. Springtime, things would become life again, okay? Now, in the fires, okay, this is kind of a side note. So they would light these bonfires. They would dress in like these Norse, in these different outfits and stuff like that. But you know why bats are related with Halloween? The only reason apparently is because, and bats are only seen as evil because when they would do these seances and they would do these bonfires and try to keep the spirits away and all of that, well, back then, bats would notice there is a large amount of insects collecting in this one area. Remember, there's no light pollution and there's no electricity at this time. So when you've got a bonfire going back then and it's the only bonfire within 15 miles, you have all the bugs and everything come around. And so bats would fly around and they would start to devour the bugs. And so these people perceived that as this kind of a spiritual, like weird, like they thought bats were evil. They thought that this was like one way that the spirits would try to scare them or something like that. And so the source of bats becoming kind of like this nocturnal, creepy animal was from that. All right, now, okay, so Samhain, let's see here, where am I at my notes? Okay, wasn't just a festival. Oh, so they would worship, so this was like harvest season for a lot of people. And so they believed, like in the pagan belief, they thought that if the gods or God would bless them, then they would have a plentiful harvest. And of course, we're talking about life and death for these people. We're not, the food supply, right? So they were offering sacrifices. So they would offer animals, they would offer grains, and they would offer people as sacrifices to whatever god or gods that their pagan worship was related to. And this was a kind of a hodgepodge of a festival that had to do with crops and blessing, and it was centered on death. Now, in doing this, you say, why would they kill their own people? Why would they kill people? All right, so Samhain became the origination of the Day of the Dead, similar to other cultures around the world. So they set aside this time to richly celebrate the dead, and they sacrificed. Now, in doing so, they believed that these people that they were offering as sacrifice would then become a part of the universe, or that they would become kind of like what you might think of as like sainted. Like they would just be more noble, like martyrdom would be more noble. And so they thought it was noble to kill people, or noble to offer people as sacrifices. I don't know about the people being offered, but they thought it was a big thing because they highly regarded death, because there was this idea that when you died, you became a part of everything, and then you were in that spirit realm. Okay? So
they really keep the spirits away, but they also really become.
yeah, so some are evil and some, I guess, are worthy of being worshipped or being venerated, I guess you would say. All right, so make sure I'm not skipping anything. Okay, so next thing is this, I think. Yeah, okay, so why is it not called Samhain or Samhain today? Why do we not call October 31st Samhain? Well, Christianity started about 2,000 years ago, as so did the pagan origins of Halloween. So we're talking about similarities, like in the timeline of when things happen. Well, in the 600s, Christians began to spread all throughout the world. Because of persecution, the Ottoman Empire actually started killing a lot of people, and then the Catholic Church became a big thing. And eventually, you guys know that the Catholic Church kind of took over a lot of the world, and there was a lot of converting happening and things like that. Not that we believe in Catholicism, but that was kind of the world's known version of Christianity for the most part. So when that happened, Christians, Catholics, whatever you want to call them, noticed these pagan practices happening everywhere. They noticed the seances. They noticed that people were worshiping nature. They were honoring and venerating the dead. Catholicism has some ties to that. You guys know what I mean by that? What does Catholicism teach about people who pass away? They go to a place called purgatory, and you can like pay indulgences, or you could pray people, and there's a strong tie to veneration of saints and dead people, praying to dead people. So there's similarities happening between the pagan culture and quote unquote Christianity. And so the people didn't want to just shut the door on the pagans and say, you guys are evil, bad, you can't be redeemed. So they tried to spread their Christianity with the world. And so what they tried to do was let them keep their pagan practices in part, and then adopt them into kind of their Christian culture to a degree, so that we could try to win them. Now, I think there's an error in that, because one always wins. This is not neutral, is it? Like, whenever you try to go into the world to change the world, you wind up being the one corrupted. You're not the one that typically will change everything. So that's what happened with Christianity and Halloween. All right, so as Christianity spread across the known world, instead of stamping out pagan practices, they adopted and reimagined the practices. Okay? So there was this very well-known pagan festival on May 13th. Okay, this is where we're going to start getting into where Halloween came from, okay? So on May 13th, there was a festival. It's a pagan festival called La Moria, and it was pretty weird, very weird. And it was when pagans would pray the restless dead spirits, or they would pray for the restless dead spirits, and then it got a Christian makeover, and it was an attempt to Christianize this pagan celebration. But a lot of the themes stayed the same, and they kept going, okay? And so in the Catholic Church, Pope Boniface created a day called All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day. And the word hallow, it's an old-fashioned English word that just means holy or to sanctify, okay? To honor as holy, to consecrate, to ordain. You guys remember in the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray, right? Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name, or your name, right? And what we're saying is we want your name regarded as holy. We want your name regarded as righteous and pure and awesome and glorified in all the earth. And so they called this All Hallows Day to try to make it be a holy high day. And this was on May 13th. And they tried to change from worshiping the dead and making sacrifices to the dead to praying for the martyrs of the faith, or praying about the martyrs of the faith and honoring the martyrs of the faith, people who have died for Christianity. So they wanted to honor the most holy of dead Christians. Okay, and because the Christianized version of the pagan holiday was such a success, by the 700s, Pope Gregory moved the day from May 13th to November 1st in order that he would try to rival pagan practices that were occurring on that day called the Day of the Dead. Okay? So stick with me, guys. He wanted to offer a Christian alternative to the widespread pagan Samhain. Okay? In other words, in order to try to Christianize it, he tried to compete with it. Both of them dealt with the afterlife, which was their central theme, but it was all about death. Now, I'm on slide 18. All right, good. All right, so it was a calculated move by the Catholic Church to bring in more pagans to try to convert them. And because of that, it exploded in popularity, and it quickly became like the day when people would go to church. So, All Saints' Day, now this is a picture that was a painting this is in New Orleans, showing people getting ready for All Saints' Day. So they're like all around the town, they're putting up decorations, they're hanging wreaths and doing things. People would go to church kind of like you would think of Christmas and Easter. Like that's what they thought of this day. And this was did I say from the 1800s? You can kind of see it up there, I think. 1885. All right. So people would come out of the woodworks to come to church on that day, and they would try to Christianize that. So it became so popular, people started celebrating it on the eve of All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day. On the eve. So you have October 31st becomes All Hallows' Eve. And so they got used to saying, Happy All Hallows' Eve. Can you say that like, does that just roll off the tongue? No. And they would say All Hallows' Even, and it finally became Halloween. So that's how we got from La Moria, Dia de la Moria, to Halloween. Okay, and like I said, it was the church trying to do the best they can to reach the world, but not really change a lot of the practices. They were just trying to get them to come into the church. But it all centered around death. It all centered, and this is what you guys need to understand tonight, it all centers around death. Okay? Now, the problem with Halloween, guys, is that it did not replace all of the pagans' versions of the Day of the Dead, which still takes place even today. And so they were unsuccessful, and they continue to persist as we speak. And now, usually All Souls' Day or Days of the Dead festivals usually last 3 days. October 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd. So what the Catholic Church, or what the quote-unquote Christians were trying to accomplish, really only accelerated the pagan practices. It didn't actually replace them, and it didn't make them holy, and it didn't make them better. All right, you see a theme we're kind of working with here. I'm not saying anything, do it, don't do it. I'm just saying, you kind of use your thinker and you go, okay, so Christians typically wrestle with this now. This is what we're trying to figure out, right? Do we placate or participate in so far into the practices? Does that actually accomplish anything for Jesus, or does it actually further the cause of Satan? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Okay, so let me make sure I'm not skipping something. Am I confusing anybody right now? Is anybody confused? Okay, you guys are tracking with me right now. All right. Okay, so slide 21. Okay, so Halloween then becomes associated with dead souls, death, and the supernatural once again. Here's another part of it. Some say that the church also helped establish the tradition of trick-or-treating, kind of. Maybe not the complete origin, but part of it was pushed by the church. So on All Souls Day, when they would celebrate All Souls Day, people would go door to door begging for soul cakes. Okay, and these were these were spice cakes with raisins in them, and then you could get them from people's houses who bake them for you. But they would call it something. They would call it souling. And the reason they would do it, if I knocked on your door and got a soul cake from you, I would, with my candle in my hand and at your door, I would pray for all of the souls trapped in purgatory, for your family and for people you love. And it was like an exchange. A lot different than trick or treat, smell my feet, all that kind of stuff, right? But back then, on All Souls Day, that's what they would do. Which, by the way, if you don't know this, purgatory is an imaginary, made-up place, not a biblical place. You won't find it anywhere in the Bible. There's no such place that exists. When someone's soul departs this earth, they go immediately into the presence of God or to hell. All right, that's just, there's no intermediate state. There's no soul sleeping. There's no purgatory. But again, these false beliefs were the way people lived their lives in these practices. So they dropped the prayer part of it eventually, and the tradition became more secularized, eventually morphing into what we have today, which is trick-or-treating. Now, slide 22, that's where I'm at. Here we go, slide 23. So there's a connection now that we have to draw between Halloween and the Day of the Dead. Both honor the dead, both are at the end of summer, both have a remembrance of past sins, and that's done through the prayers offered for the people in purgatory, etc., etc. And then, fourthly, in pagan occult practices, even today, people are engaging in, because of the time of the year it is, the way they worship, a time for sacrifices. Okay? And the pagan, occult, idolatrous people still do that today. All right. Now, 6 more slides. Oh, that's what I was going to show you. This is a picture of what a sacrificial system on the Day of the Dead or All Hallows or whatever, wherever around the world, kind of would be an example of what it would look like. And if you can see inside this thing, they're stuffing people inside of it. What does that kind of look like today? Like a scarecrow or something like that. Some people dress up like a scarecrow whenever they do that. Well, on Halloween and the Day of the Dead, they both had to deal with death and sacrifice, and people would be burned alive inside of something like this. And so, in those practices, sacrifice was central in their pagan festivals, for the Druids especially. This was a large wicker statue to sacrifice animals, even humans, by burning them inside of it, offering to their gods. Now, in pagans' worldview, here's something I didn't discuss with you guys. In the pagans' worldview, not the Catholic Church, but in the pagans' worldview, they believe you could be reincarnated. So if Fellaini was stuffed inside this thing, we burned her alive in celebration, we would be happy and joyful and happy while she's painfully, excruciatingly dying, because we believe that she would be created into something different or better, or hopefully you're advanced from where you are now, right? And there's a practice that's borrowed from other places in the world. All right, so we've established that Halloween and the Day of the Dead and All Hallows Eve and all of that, a lot of it centers around death and sacrifice. And that's the main thing Lexi and I kind of try to wrestle with, is like, and our kids are very sensitive when they see and hear things. Anything that sounds spooky that comes across on Blippi or on Daniel Tiger or what else? It is like, ooh, and Livy is like, I do not like this. And she's usually crying or something. The other part of it is like, what do we do with the trick-or-treating part? Well, we just don't want people with an axe in their head coming to our door, and our daughters and our son, like our little boys, seeing them like that. Like, we just don't, because we don't want to desensitize our kids. So we try to separate ourselves from the gory parts of, like, and I know that they're costumes, they don't mean anything to the people that are wearing them, yada, yada, yada. But like horror movies and things like that, that people are dressing up like that, I just don't like it. And I don't want my kids doing it. Because all of that really is just an entertainment, superficial entertainment on the surface, whereas underneath the surface, there have been people burned alive for this type of stuff, underneath all of that and the origin of it. So here's what Lexi and I kind of have to wrestle with. Okay, Halloween is here, and it's in our neighborhoods, left, right, and center. There are things in people's yards that are really bizarre. When I go to McDonald's and I go down Texas, and right there by Woodward Plumbing, there's this person that lives there, and I see these heads on poles, and then like this graveyard stuff, and then and I don't remember, there's a sign that says something there, and I'm just like, wow, like this is in our face. We cannot avoid seeing stuff like this, right? It's everywhere. So as Christians, I think it's important for us to stay away from the dark elements of Halloween because of what everything actually means. We're going to get into a little bit of scripture and then I'll be done. We don't want to be participants with demons and demonic activity. We know that though these people are pantheistic, polytheistic, pagan worshipers of nature, that we know that they are not dealing with nature and other gods and human souls disembodied and all of that. We are actually dealing with angels, demons, Satan, God, Jesus. That's what it's all really about. So here's a couple of here's 5 questions or 5 things we should think about. So number 1, do we want to be participating with demons? And this is 1 Corinthians 10:20 says this. The sacrifices of pagans, and that's what we've been talking about tonight, right? Pagans, are offered to demons, not to God. And I do not want you to be participants with demons. And he says, you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too. You cannot have part in both the Lord's table and the table of demons. Are we trying to arouse the Lord's jealousy? Are we stronger than he? And then the response that Paul anticipates from the people who are licensed, they want to do everything. We can do anything we want because we're Christians. They would say this to Paul, well, everything's permissible. We can do whatever we want as Christians. I can involve myself in whatever movie, whatever practice, whatever thing I want because I'm saved and I have the Holy Spirit in me. And just because I go see this thing, do this thing, doesn't matter. Everything's permissible. But Paul says this, but not everything is beneficial. Something might be okay in the sense that it's not going to make you unsaved, but it's not something always that's going to build you up spiritually and sanctify you. That's what Paul's point is. Everything's permissible, but not everything is constructive. Nobody should seek his own good, but the good of others. And that brings me to point number 2. What's beneficial or building up in my relationship to Jesus? So what about the entertainment industry and Halloween and all these kinds of things that I got to deal with in my life? What is actually beneficial or building up in my relationship to Jesus? So things that don't do that for me, like don't bring me closer to Jesus. Here's a question. If it's not bringing us closer to Jesus, what is it doing? It's always pulling us away because there's nothing that's neutral, right? So, closer to Jesus or not is my question I have to ask myself. Everything's permissible, but not everything is upbuilding or beneficial. And so, is this thing I'm doing, seeing, going to, whatever, beneficial or building up in my relationship to Jesus? And just because someone's not outwardly and overtly going out into the seances and being a part of all of those things in the harvest fields and in the caves and the groves, just because they're not dealing with the satanic directly doesn't mean they're not involved with it or entertained by it in other ways. Okay? Number 3, what does my participation do to others? How does it affect their conscience? So not only if I'm going somewhere and not being built up in the faith, what does me taking someone else to do those things doing to them? That's my question I ask myself. Say, Wilson, you're super, bro, you are like, you're, how would you say that? Super, what would you call that, wife? Your bar is this high. Nobody lives that way, right? Well, the Bible seems to indicate that we should be thinking about others and the decisions that we make and how it affects their Christian edification, their growth, their being more like Jesus day in and day out too. Because it's love to do that, right? To be pure. Let me tell you guys this. On this point right here, I ask myself, do I further pollute their thinking or help them think Philippians 4:8 thoughts? What does Philippians 4:8 say? Everything that is true, I don't actually remember them off the top of my head in order, but true, noble, excellent, pure, praiseworthy. What else is there? Is there more? Lovely. Okay, so my participation in or entertainment by certain things in my life, am I having that produced in this thing I'm doing? And guys, I have my own things too that I've got to ask myself about, okay? Like watching the Dallas Cowboys, even watching Thunder games, whenever the commercials come on, I have to watch myself for a lot of that stuff. Does it help me? And also, is it polluting someone else? I've got to think about that. Now, I was talking to Alan Kilamaco a few days ago about this. He said in high school, when he was at Fargo, he had a friend that, and he was in our youth group, and he had gotten saved and everything, and only been a Christian a couple of years, maybe a year, not even. But he had a friend like, hey, let me show you this website. And it was, I don't remember the website address, probably good. But it was somethingdeath.com. And the website was only videos of people dying. And it was like, he was like, I remember, it's like it's still vivid in my mind, and I'm not trying to do this to hurt your mind, but it's like, I remember like people getting rolled up in the giant paper roll and all of it turning red. And I like just weird, creepy things. Like I remember someone getting shot. I remember this, and he's like, those images are still in my head today and they still mess with me. That's an example of someone showing something that corrupts or pollutes them, and it harms them in the long run. I don't want to take somebody to a movie that they have to see a scene of sex or violence or drug use, or that's where I'm just like, I don't want to do that, because I have no idea how that's going to affect them down the road. He's still messed up over that deal in a lot of ways. Number 4, 2 more left. Do I become too friendly with do I become too friendly with my biggest enemy? Like, hey, buddy, death. Hey. 1 Corinthians 15:25 says, for Jesus must reign until he has put all his enemies, Jesus' enemies. What is Halloween and the Day of the Dead and All Saints Day and all that glorify? Death, right? Death is Jesus' enemy. Death killed Jesus, if you will, right? Like, that's pretty obvious when you say it, but death is the enemy of even our God. Under his feet, verse 26, and the last enemy to be destroyed when Jesus is said and done with everything is death. So my question I ask myself is this: why would I want to become friendly with my biggest enemy and my God's biggest enemy? The topic of death. I don't want to glorify it. I don't want to placate to it. I don't want to give into it. I don't want to give my money to it. I don't want to do that, because that's my biggest enemy. Jesus came to destroy that, right? And that's number 5. Thinking biblically, number 5, does my participation further Christ's efforts or the devil's efforts? You say, well, it's not a big deal to do X, Y, Z. Well, what I'm trying to say is what the Catholic Church has been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years has not been working. It has not been working, right? Like, it hasn't been snuffing out Satan's work. It's been multiplying and magnifying Satan's work more than anything. So 1 John 3 says this in verse 8, the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. Destroy the works of the devil. And so I don't want to participate in something that's not in God's preferred will for my life. And Christ's efforts in this world is to bring life, and for us to have life and life more abundantly. And I want other people to have life and life more abundantly. So what can we do in this season? I don't want to further Satan's quote-unquote efforts. I don't want to further the darkness, and I don't want to entertain myself with it. I don't want to give into it, and I don't want to worship in it. I don't want to do anything that makes more darkness magnified in this world. So we want to turn Halloween, or this era, and flip it on its head, and maybe we can do things with it to make it about life and light and the gospel. I mean, you could almost do something with it, like, since it's called Halloween, like, hallowed be God, or I was even thinking of, and somebody came up with an event to use that word hallowed. Man, that's the word Jesus used about his Father. Hallowed be his name. Like, that should be our motivation this season, is to hallow our Lord, to glorify and to see him as revered and honored. So people do come up with ideas, and there are a lot of Christians that have ideas that we can choose to take part. We decided not to do trunk or treat some years ago because we didn't see that it was really it was more like, this is a neutral event that doesn't seem to be gaining and glorifying more the light. It's just an event. People come with the axe in their head, and they pick up the candy, and they go to the next trunk or treat. And so, was that accomplishing anything for the gospel? I mean, there are things that people can do. They can go to a website. Living Waters has like gospel tracts that you can put them together, and they're shaped like pumpkins, and then like you can give them out when people come to your house for trick or treating. And it has like this, you can put candy in it, I think, and then like do things like that. Just little trinkets like that to share the gospel or something like that, depending on your conscience and how you want to participate. But this is not a fixed do or don't conversation. This is more of this is just information to share with you guys and gals, and to help you process, like, how far, how much, and what do I do in this season, even when it's not this season, related to the entertainment industry and all that other stuff. So, questions, comments, concerns?
There's a kid in my class that I saw watching that after Summer Pride.
Say what?
There's a kid in my class that I saw watching that after Summer Pride.
Watching what? Oh, that website? Oh my. Yeah, that'll mess you up. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Remember the last Wednesday sermon with the anchor? The more you drift out away from Jesus, what happens? He says, keep watch over yourselves and see to it that you do not drift away. You pay attention to what you've learned and heard, so that you don't drift from Jesus. All right. Next week, we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the roots in the Tower of Babel and bring it around to the gospel. And I think there's going to be a trunk or treat at the high school, but I don't know how many people are going to be going to that. I don't think, our church is not participating in it, but some churches, they're sending all their people to participate in that, so I don't know. I don't know who all's going to be here next Wednesday.
I'll be here next week.
Hmm?
I'll be here next week.
All right. I'll make it tailor-made for you.
Yeah.
All right. I'll pray. Let's go. Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity to meet here. We just ask that you would give us all a tender conscience in this area. I pray that this was received well and that it was delivered from a heart of grace and mercy. And Lord, I just ask that you help us to give mercy and some latitude for one another. I know that there's a lot of differing opinions about these types of things, but I pray that what is first and foremost is important to all of us is that your name be glorified and that your light and your life be seen throughout all the earth, Lord, that in you is no darkness at all, God. So I just pray that our participation and our anticipation for this season would be one that would seek to give this world a knowledge of who you are and hallowing your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
Let's go over
Oh my goodness.
learning about the Maya culture.
Mayans?
Maya,
Yeah.
or whatever. And they did stuff like that. Had like a good harvest season.
Yes, they did. That's exactly what we talked about. That's exactly right.